Thumbs
I
up?
believe so, yes.
Okay, so I'm Catherine Wygant Fawcett. I'm the Executive Director of the Institute for Family Owned Business, otherwise known as IFOB. And it's great to see you all here in person, and welcome to those of you on Zoom. I think you're seeing me on the camera up there. Brooke Stewart, our Director of Communications, is our tech expert, along with Priscilla Hanson-Mahoney here, who is our next gen facilitator for Blazing Trails Coaching. Brooke will be our chat moderator for those of you on Zoom. And we're recording this program for later viewing, and we'll send the slides and contact information and other follow-up resources for you after the program. We'd like to thank Seth Weber and his team from Barry Dunn for hosting us in this space. And I'd also like to thank our sponsors, Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare and Maine Trust for local news. In a few minutes, I'll invite Bill Barossa, Director of Regional Market Sales, Maine, New Hampshire, and Rhode Island from Harvard Pilgrim to say a few words in a few minutes about it. At the IFOB, we promote, support, and champion the success of family-owned businesses. They're the backbone of our local economy, with education, networking, and other services. This year, we celebrate our 30th anniversary. Here we go. We have a new logo, an online store with great pieces. We have something out there to show you some examples. And we just had our amazing 24th Maine Family Business Awards with over 500 people watching in person and online. So who was able to attend? What'd you think?
It's awesome.
Yeah, fun. Good. Yeah.
Especially the zombies.
Did you like the zombies? Yeah. So we unfortunately we got a little bit hacked by someone this week who thought it would be great to have a director of operations position that they put on LinkedIn for the IFOB, and everybody wants to join us, but it's not really a real position. So we're a little bit behind on getting some of our information out about the awards, but we have one of our winners here, Matt, and from McDougal Orchards. So we're going to have follow-up videos, and if you didn't get to see the zombies, you'll get to see the highlights, and you'll get to see our 30th video, and that's all coming in our email coming out soon. We've offered over 50 programs, both online and in person and hybrid. Many of them happen right here. You can check out our website or in the back of our book. We have our upcoming programs. And I also have my famous hierarchy here that we're also going to make that interactive on our website in the new year. So that'll be fun. So the programs are for all your employees. So please invite them and anyone else who you think might benefit from them. Give their members, they're open to all. So we have a number of upcoming programs. Our final how-to will be on Wednesday, December 11th from 8 to 10 a.m. right here. We'll talk about the trials, tribulations, and learnings of selling a privately held business with Randy Richard from Richard Brothers Financial, and he'll have 3 family business panelists. One of them was RJ Grondin, who won, and they passed it within the family, and then there'll be 2 that went outside. We also have our New Year party. We tried to have a holiday party in December. We moved it to January. So it's our New Year party, and it always snows, but we always have fun. So good food and things. That's on January 22nd. And that will be at the Woodlands. So today we have a special program for our next gens. We'll learn from Chris Yonker, who's a certified business advisor over here, and Sara Belletete, VP of Branch Development at Belletete, where I've shopped in their Winchendon store ever since I was a kid. So yes, I live in I have a place in Massachusetts. I'm summer focused, but I live in Boothby. So the topic they'll discuss is navigating the minefield of competing visions, identifying and cultivating next-gen leaders to steer your family business into the future. So anyone here in Next Gen had any challenges with the generation? Yeah, it's a good place for you guys.
It's okay to the room. You can
So these items that they are going to touch on are also the types of topics that we touch on in our peer groups called the Next Gen. These groups meet 6 times a year, are facilitated by a coach, and have no 2 family members and no competing businesses. We have generally 8 to 10 participants in these meetings, and they're held here and also on Zoom. We sign a confidentiality agreement and agree to meet regularly. We'll open these groups up in the beginning of the year and then close them so the group can get to know each other. So towards the end of the program, I'm going to be handing out a survey here, and we'll also get it online. We have other peer groups as well. We have a CEO Central for companies of over 5 million in gross revenues. We have a women's leadership forum for women who are running their business. We have a working parents group for family business and associate partners, and an EOS think tank. So if you're interested in any of those peer groups, please sign up, because we open them up at the beginning of the year to close them and have people be involved through the rest of the year. And then we have Priscilla Hanson Mahoney, who is here, and I'm here if you want to chat with us afterwards about any of those peer groups.
And EOS.
Pardon?
And the EOS.
And EOS, yes. Laura's here for EOS. We have, and how about raise hands, anybody who's been in our peer groups? So we have other people who have been in them as well. So I'll now invite Bill from Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare to come up and say a few words, and then we'll turn it over to Chris to lead our discussion. Thank you so much. We had some information here online. Yes, Jeff. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here today. It's a pleasure. I'm Bill Barasser. I'm the Regional Sales Director for Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare. Catherine, congratulations on 30 years, you and your team.
Thank you.
Congratulations on the Family Business Awards. That was a really fun night.
Thank you.
Already mentioned it, talked about it. And to those maybe here in the room or online who were nominated, who won, congratulations to you all. Harvard Pilgrim is a 50+ years young nonprofit health insurer. We're based out of Massachusetts, but we do business in Maine, New Hampshire, and Rhode Island as well. Here in Maine, we have roughly 100,000 members that we serve from York County all the way to Aroostook County and in between. What sets us apart? First, our people and our service. We have a really high-functioning sales team here in Maine, working out of our Portland office. They all live and work here in Maine. Number two, I would say, would be our innovation of products and services. And a recent example of that is our Innovation Challenge, where we invited a number of companies to submit applications. These companies have products or services that support oncology, care management, pain management, et cetera, behavioral health. We had 41 applicants. We had three companies that we interviewed. And the winner, a company called Free Spiro, was launched actually earlier this year. So that was a good thing. Lastly, I would say our commitment to community. We were recently recognized in the Civic 50 as one of the 50 most socially responsible companies in the US, actually for the 4th time. So it was really, really good for us. Speaking of community, it's events like this and supporting the Institute for Family-Owned Business. It's not just about me talking about health insurance up here. It's about bringing views together and sharing their thoughts and so on. So thank you and enjoy the program.
Yeah,
You're up. Yep.
I'm also a Harvard Pilgrim customer.
Nice.
My whole family is. All right, thank you all for being here today. What's gonna go down is I'm gonna chat for a few minutes. Sarah's gonna give a little background on herself and her entry point to the family business. And then we'll do some interview, and then we'd like you all to do some Q&A too. Sound good?
Mhm.
Okay, cool. All right. So let's it's not working. Okay, well, we've got the first tech issue already.
Wait, do we test this?
Yeah, we did test it. I can always go, next slide.
Keep going.
Next
We will
slide.
fix it.
I can just nod my head when I want you to hit the slide. How's that?
We did test it, we promise.
So in reference to what we're gonna talk about. Sorry about that. Are you on the deck though, or are you on?
You should be on the deck, sorry.
No worries. So we're gonna lay out,
Professional.
we're gonna talk about competing agendas, but we're also gonna talk about what succession is and what succession isn't. And when I got into this work about 11 years ago and actually my first client that I had was in the state of Maine, believe it or not, came from a referral. And it was a family business, a multi-generation, and they were stuck. And I, you know what, I hadn't studied with FFI yet. I didn't really have the governance training and family business advising. But I kind of looked at succession as an event. Has anyone ever thought about that? Succession is, someone passes something off to someone else and you're either in it or you're not in it, right? You with me? And what I've found through the course of time working with clients is that succession really isn't an event by itself. It's a duration of a period of time where you're doing something mindfully through the course of time. The fact of this announcing someone or having someone like what just happened for Sarah, she was just this year actually, where a public announcement was made that she was a successor of the company. Well, up to that time, we had known, but we hadn't announced. And she's still not running the company and will not be running the company for a few more years yet. So it's a period of time. And ideally, leveraging the period of time is very helpful instead of just passing off. And that kind of leads me to the story here. I was working with, some people know this gentleman. I was working with this gentleman here that became a good friend of mine. He's a client. And he had in his mind how he was going to go ahead and artfully, strategically move his business on in the future within about 5 years, 7 years time. The challenge is that he figured he had 5 to 7 years time. At age 57, I remember I was talking to him. I was sitting in a parking lot, and he was talking about some things that were going on in his body that didn't feel right. And he said, "I should go physical therapy." And I said, "No, I think you need to get an MRI." And he did. And he ended up with a tumor and had brain cancer. And he lived about a year. He had about a year's span left. And I stayed engaged with him, his family, and his business through that year. And it was one of the hardest engagements I ever had. And what ended up happening is that we ended up making decisions in haste because we didn't have the time and the resources to make them as thoughtfully we'd have liked to. And that experience really had anchored me in becoming a proponent of helping families in transition that, because we just don't, I'm not here to say, oh my gosh, I may not be here tomorrow, but regardless, at some point, we're all not going to be here. And at some point, regardless of whoever's running the business, they're not going to be here also. And how do we thoughtfully navigate something along this line? A few weeks ago, I was speaking in London, and I was interviewing the oldest family business in the UK. So he was like the 26th generation. Okay, they started in 1515. So we had my team created a slide. Think about photography hadn't even been invented for a couple hundred years by the time they could take pictures of anything. So we used AI to build what would it look like, and this really looks like the Cotswolds basically. And at that time, King Henry VIII was running the show there in England. But that's when the business started. And the reason I bring him up is when I was interviewing him, we talked about the transition and business ownership. And he said, "Oh, no, I'm not really the owner. I'm merely the steward." And I was like, wow, that's an interesting philosophy, right? It kind of reminds me of New England. I'm originally from the Midwest. We have these historic homes. People have these homes. They put money and time into them, and they're caretakers. And they're thinking of perhaps the next family that will come along and own that home. It's a different psychology, isn't it? When you're a steward of something, as opposed to someone that just, I own the business, I run the business, this power over paradigms that are a bit old. There's actually one of the first photographs he had of, there were butchers. So that's why that's hanging there, but just to give you an vantage point. So there's 3 takeaways that I'd like to anchor today with Sarah. And the first one is that I just started talking about succession is not an event. And times are changing faster than ever, and I'm going to talk about that. Number 2, when navigating, there's always competing agendas, and I'm going to talk about why that exists, even if they're not said. And we teach a process that we call basically parallel pathing. It's getting alignment and within the room with individuals and the collective, and we'll talk about what that means. But the me to we is essential in order to do this. And the third piece, and probably the most important one here, is development and a level of transcendence is necessary. Which is why you're here. This is why, quite frankly, IFOB exists. It's why the peer groups exist. It allows you to have resources available to plug into to change. So why does this matter? Well, these statistically, and probably everyone here is pretty well anchored, so I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on the stats. But without a clear succession plan, there are potential losses in profitability, transitions cost money, and even if down the road you decide to sell the family business, let's just say you do and that's not a failure, then the fact of the matter is there's still things that can be done to improve the viability of what that transaction will look like for the family. Now, what are some of the trends that are happening right now in the succession realm? And I'm going to talk a bit from a global perspective. I know there's most of you are operating local businesses, but still this is important to understand. The number one goal of businesses planning succession in the next 12, 24 months, and we did a survey on this, is ensuring business continuity. They don't want the succession to interrupt what's happening within the business. Folks want to be able to maximize returns throughout trends. Sometimes people are getting cashed out. Maybe there's things that are happening in the business. This is an interesting one. 53% of Gen Z wants to run their own business in the next 10 years. That's half, right? Half of Gen Z. So they have an entrepreneurial mindset. And if we put them in a business with a power over paradigm, telling them what to do and not giving them any autonomy, how well is that going to go for us? And then we're in a VUCA environment. Does anyone know VUCA? But volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. That's the environment that we're in right now, collectively. And that's not going to change anytime soon, right? We've got a lot going on, more going on in the world than probably any of us are remember, right? Did you know we were just through a pandemic recently? You remember that? No? All right. Big 10 global trends impacting family business. Look at that, Catherine's face right over the S's. All right, okay, so they are, we have an aging population. There's a lot of baby boomers at the helm in family businesses. We have a changing social and cultural values that's happening. There's a lot of expansion to global happening. Environmental stress and resource depletion, growth in AI, synthetic biology, and robotics. It's coming fast. Have you ever seen anyone here use AI at all? Yeah, right? And it's changing very quickly. Shifting in global economic power, that's happening. Indonesia will be one of the top 5 economic powers in the next 10, 20 years. You didn't realize that or not, which is kind of interesting. Global political instability, increased human migration, demand for economic and social justice, and then now also there's an onset of smart cities. They're building cities. You know, Deepak Chopra was actually working with the king of some country a place out by Indonesia, where they're actually mindfully building places for people to live that are rooted in healthcare and technology driven. For people, because down the road, people are going to be able to live the amount of cases where they want to. Right? We have someone associated with IFOBs in Florida right now. If we didn't have technology, we couldn't do this. So the point I'm making is change is inevitable. The question is, to what degree will you and or the key people in your organization do so? And I think one thing that I talk about this, you're like, oh, you don't know my Uncle Henry. You don't know my cousin, whoever that's running the business. Whatever it is, everyone had an experience in their family or a family member they thought would never change? Maybe you still hold that paradigm? Okay, right? So the fact of the matter is it just takes a single catalyst in the family system to start evoking something different. And that's part of the reason I invited, one of the main driving reasons I invited Sara to participate in this discussion today, because she's part of an organization where she's the first lady leader. They've never had a lady leader in that organization, right? She's also very anchored in development and growth. And I want to talk about that. The old model of succession is is business-centric, economically driven, and really trying to make a business to last forever. And this is from Randall Carlock. And Randall he is a professor. He is one of the, he worked with John Davis on the three circle model. He's one of the pioneers in the family business realm. The new model is family and society centric. Economic value and social responsibility, family talent, career development, and well-being are anchors. So we're really working on the unit of the family in itself and the well-being of the individuals in the family in a higher sense than just the business itself. Knowing that if we do that, the business will benefit. The new mindset and behavioral model is empowering the family as key stakeholders, fostering next-gen development and engagement, strengthening family dynamics, and embracing entrepreneurship. And this is a tough one. This is a tough one. Embracing, like, how do we create the container for individuals to have a sense of autonomy and creativity to step into more of an emergent space than just telling them, this is your job, this is what you do, this is how we're gonna measure success, you go do this, that's that, and then, if I want your opinion, I'll give it to you, right? So we're wanting to cultivate entrepreneurship in our family business space, and it's different. This is Harold Dweck, as an author. This is the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. And you may ask yourself, for those that are here, and I know we even have more that are visiting online, if you have a fixed mindset, you're looking at things, avoiding challenges, giving up easily, see effort as a thoughtless or worse, ignore useful negative feedback. We're kind of stuck and relegated in a fixed mindset. And what we want to do is we want to develop a growth mindset, learning from criticism, accepting feedback. This is not easy. Working from this type of paradigm is not an easy place to work from. Growth takes effort. So when we talk about competing agendas, why do they happen? Why are we not relegated to change so much? We're all human beings. We all have a nervous system. We all have subconscious minds. And what does our nervous system regulate in us? Regulates how we feel and how we, how we impact safety in our bodies, right? And when we feel threatened, what do? We close down. A big part of the work that we do at the center is when we work with families, part of our job is to actually help them regulate, so when they get in the room, they can share from the truth with one another. Because what do we typically do? We filter what we say, our candor. Imagine a candor scale. Imagine you have a meeting, a family meeting, or a business meeting, on a scale of 1 to 5, and you ask yourself, on a scale of 1 to 5, how much candor did we have in that meeting? Was it a 2? Was it a 3? How many organizations do you think run into 5? Not very many, right? But something you can bring, there's no additional charge for that. You can write that down. But think about what if we had a candor scale in our family meetings? Would it be interesting? Well, I wouldn't want that. Who knows what would happen? But we're wired for self-interest. So how do we navigate with that? Has anyone studied Patrick Lencioni, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team? Anyone here? It's a great piece of work. If you haven't, I highly recommend it. He talks about the first basis of the pyramid, absence of trust. And I was just connecting, you're an EOS person, right? So of course you've got the 5.
She is.
Oh, you are. I know someone over here is, right? So yeah, so EOS embeds that into the curriculum. So the absence of trust. And he said, well, you're just gonna be vulnerable. But it's really hard to be vulnerable when we don't feel safe. So there's some things we wanna do to work on that. Individual value and vision architecture. So how do we get beyond these competing agendas? And when you listen to Sarah and I having dialogue, when you're going from generation to generation, there's 2 different things that you're navigating. You got the tradition of the business that you want to hold sacred, right? It's who makes us who we are. We don't want to give this away. But then there's also at the same time the tension of the future calling, where the innovation is beckoning. So how do I listen to innovation and at the same time protect who we are? Right? It's just as much of an art as it is a science. And quite frankly, some of this work, it takes time and it takes space and it takes participation. That's why I look at succession and the process of longevity in a business to be creating time and space on this. So the world out there is moving really fast. We just talked about it. I've had clients say, well, can we get the 1 hour meeting into 30 minutes? And can we get the 30 minutes into 20 minutes? These are some of the things people are thinking, how can I get more into our schedule? And I'm saying, how can we create more space in our schedule so that we can work on our creativity and create the time and energy and the effort and build the container to have these conversations of how we get alignment and where we hear the future and where we've been and what do we want to protect and what do we want to keep sacred. Each individual in a family system, each key stakeholder also, by the way, equally important, right? Stakeholders are important when we're navigating transition. Sarah and I will talk about this. Those stakeholders, they are wondering what's happening. I can't tell you the amount of times we've done interviews that when we do intake, we go ahead and we do a discovery project, and the owners are like, oh yeah, well, we got this plan, but they know they got an aging owner or an aging operator. And they wonder, what do they wonder? What's it mean to me? Are there gonna be less opportunity here for me? Is there gonna be more opportunity here for me? Am I gonna have to go somewhere else? What's going on? And all they know is what you tell them. And then guess what they do with what you don't tell them? They make up stories.
Yeah.
And you think the stories are good? No, the stories aren't good typically. Okay, so I say let's get some clarity on what individuals want. What do you want for their future? What are their core values? How do they want to live their lives? And let's get this individually for the family members. Let's do it for the stakeholders. And then we can start looking for alignment. And we can also do it for the business. What are we looking to do with the company? What's the vision of corporate? And then now we can start seeing where are we in parallel paths? Where are we not in parallel paths? And then that's helpful and that's good information to have. I lost my remote control.
Oh.
So the me to we scenario is a really important, you can jump to the next slide when you're ready. All right, there we go. So the me to we scenario is a really important one because it allows, here's what has to happen, and this is a key point. I have to believe that if we do what's best for the greater good, that I'm not gonna have to give up what I want. I'm not gonna have to give up what I want for my life, personally, professionally. If I can't believe if we do what's best for the greater whole from the we, then I'm gonna stay in the me. So navigating this process is a transition, mentally and emotionally, that has to occur. And I look at this holistically. I mean, if you look at, when we navigate succession, a lot of folks, they spend time like, well, okay, let's work on our strategy and operational readiness. Maybe we'll work on our governance structure as part of that. And that's all important pieces. But equally, I say, well, let's get some personal awareness. Where is each person individually in the system? Where is their psychological safety? How are they feeling about this scenario? Where is their fear? What's happening with leadership development? Are we doing 360s on individuals that are rising in the organization? Are we building development teams? Are we plugging them into peer groups for rising generations like you guys have here? What are we doing? What's happening with the family business ownership and the governance from? Where are we, what I find oftentimes, family businesses, once you get to Gen 2, Gen 3, do you have a policy for family members to become employees? At some point, it's necessary. It's necessary, because guess what happens? People end up in the wrong seat on the bus, and it creates a mess. I just got introduced to a family I was speaking out in California recently, and they were telling me that one of the individuals in the family, he had worked there for 10 years, he got let go and now he cut himself off from the family. And they have to communicate through an attorney to him, right? But what could have happened upstream, I wonder, to prevent that scenario from happening? What could have happened upstream from that scenario? Now they want to change the ownership structure, and then he's got part ownership, and they're trying to figure out what to do. It's a bit of a mess. I'd like to come in before it's really messy, if it's helpful on our team, if we can. So there's things that can be done. So I was introduced to the Belletete family about 2 years ago. And it is actually funny, because in a later life, I actually called on them over 20 years ago when I worked for 3M. Not even related to that point. So I knew of the organization. I've always had a high level of respect for this organization. I met the families that own this organization, including Sara. And I'd like to have Sara come up here and talk a little bit about the history of the company from a high level, as well as, can you talk to us about when did you kind of like, from childhood a little bit into like what brought you to where you are? Then I'm gonna interview you. You want to grab that one? All right, make sure we turn it on, and I'll be right over here.
Hello. Good morning. My name is Sara Belletete. I am fourth generation in the succession planning to run our family business. We have 10 locations. We're a lumberyard and hardware store. We have 10 locations. We just recently bought our 10th in Brookline, New Hampshire. Being fourth generation, I can say from childhood, I am exactly where I want to be. I'm on the path I want to be, and it makes my every day a wonderful day because I truly am doing exactly what I set out to do. As Chris said, I am the first female on the board of directors at our company, also the first female who's going to be running the ship. I love the steward thing you said. That's great. My father has been in the business for about 45 years. We started in 1898 in Jaffrey, New Hampshire. 9 locations in New Hampshire, 1 in Massachusetts. And this is the first time we actually have a plan for succession. Every year, it's just been previous generations. It's like, oh, you're going to run the ship now with no planning, nothing to do it. And this is huge for us. It's a big step. We're a big company. We employ 350 employees. And so many of them prior to the announcement were feeling, what's going to happen to me? Are we going to sell? You know, independent lumberyards are being bought up every day around here. Are we going to sell? What is my future in the company? And when you have 350 employees really wondering what's in it for them, it's very nerve-wracking. So Chris is helping us along. I'm a different leader than previous ones, and the generation thing, it's a little tricky at times, dealing with people's emotions and feelings and how we're moving forward. So
Can you tell us about, I was thinking when we chatted, and one of the things I always ask people when they're family, and I think I'm on camera. Okay, good. When I'm working with family business owners obviously everyone understands like the 3-circle model, right? So you could have someone who's an owner who's not in the business. You could have someone who's in the business and not an owner, or they could have future ownership. But one thing that's on my mind is would this person be in the business or even in their role if this wasn't a family business? Has anyone ever seen someone like in a job or in a function of an organization, and they're doing the job, but they never would have taken that, and they're going through the motions, and they're just really not truly fulfilled. Sometimes they're not getting the job done. Some cases they're just getting the job done, but they're not really thriving, and that it is what it is. But for me, I'm trying to get clarity and like, is this person's soul aligned with the role that they're in right now? I'm just curious as someone, because part of my work is how do we help this organization, this family mindfully navigate the change process? And you said that you knew when you were a kid can you talk about that? Because I don't hear that all that often. Like when you were a kid, you knew what you wanted to be when you grew up, so to speak.
So starting at 10, my father would bring us to the store before school and I would do filing and stuff. So it was in my blood from the beginning. As soon as I was 14, I worked in the hardware section. I worked there all through college, got my degree, moved actually to St. Louis for a little bit. My father always said, you know, you need to work somewhere else so you actually understand the family dynamic. And we kind of held that rule pretty true for anybody on our board. You need to go out and see what else is out there. And that helps you to decide whether or not you actually want to come back to the family business. I came back in 2004 and I've been working there ever since. I mean, even as a kid, talking with my grandfather, you know, I couldn't wait to be there. And I know he's very proud to have his granddaughter be running the show.
And did they set any expectation on you, like, Sarah, we want you to be, you know, someday this will be all yours?
No, our family actually is divided. We have two sides of our family, so it
Through a
started.
marriage, right? Initially,
No,
there's
it
two separate
started-
families. It doesn't, because people, that'll be helpful to understand the context.
So it started with my great grandfather in 1898, Eli Belletete. And he had 9 kids, but 2 of his sons started running the company once he was retiring back in the 40s, when my grandfather came back from the war. And we actually started as a general store. So up until 1980-ish, we had actually a grocery store as well. So in our current location, the basement was our hardware store and upstairs was the grocery store and we had a liquor store, the state liquor store next door. There was never an expectation. The only expectation was you can't get an apartment in Jaffrey when you graduate high school, you have to go to college. So that was the one rule that was put down and I'm grateful for that because it got me out.
And think about the complexity there. You've got 2 separate families. Now, it's complicated enough to have a multi-generational family. But now you've got the Hatfields and the McCoys. Not necessarily, but there are times, right, when that can happen. It'd be natural, wouldn't it, right? Because one of them has the last name of the company and one of them doesn't.
And that's because my grandfather's brother had only daughters. So we had the Shays and the Beltates, we're all Beltates, really
Right.
by blood, but so we have 2 different families running the business, but one family.
Right, so now some of what we'll talk about, and I'm gonna put this out there, is, you know, we'll dive into and we can ask questions, but there might be a time we might say, well, we're not gonna go as deep into the answer because I'm not here to air their laundry either, right? And if no one else in here I know has any laundry to air, but sometimes families do, right? Some people call them skeletons in the closet. I had a colleague who used to, still does, she's amazing. She has when you come in to speak, when she speaks somewhere, you sit down, you get a little elephant, a really cool little elephant. It's actually something you can take home and it's nice. It's not, you know, like a plastic thing. And it's really to talk about the elephant in the room. And I'm like, oh, before I met her, I used to think that I was on an elephant expedition. It was always fun. Like, I'm gonna find the elephant and the skeleton, because there's, in every family space, there's the unsaid. And the unsaid's always in the room with us. But we're not talking about it, but it's there. It's crazy. It's like a ghost that everyone can see, but no one's gonna say anything about it. And part of our work is really to create enough safety in the environment so that we can have conversations to talk about the ghost or the elephant. So, because otherwise, we're gonna work around it. We're not gonna, quite frankly, if you have cycles in your family, you have cycles in your leadership team, that's an indicator that there's deeper work to be done. Cycles they're a symptom of something that's happened deeper that's not getting resolved. And this is a good one. It's not because it's one person. I have an amount of times people reached out to us and said, can you fix Bob? If this guy Bob, if you could fix him, we'd be much better off than we are right now, and he's a real pain in the ass. So if you could talk to Bob and get him to realize that this is really a business, right? You know, the interesting thing is wherever there's a Bob, there's a whole system of family members and key stakeholders that are enabling Bob. People don't want to talk about that. There's moms, there's dads, there's brothers, there's sisters. Everyone has their level of participation in what allows that to stay the way it is in the ecosystem. And I tell families, we all have to accept responsibility for Bob. People don't like to hear that, but there's something that we think and believe about Bob that's keeping Bob stuck also. It's not just Bob. We all have to do our part in that part of the equation. Now, when I came into to work with you all, there was some clarity on exactly how to navigate the future, but there's still some clarity in there was some meeting at some point where they said, who's gonna be the successor, right? And you guys can talk about that?
Was, does anybody want to take over? Within the next 4 to 5 years, the majority of the family will be retiring. All third generation, and currently the fourth generation is actually running the ship today. So they're all planning on retiring. Never before have we had the succession that one person's retiring or everybody's retiring. There was always people in the back. And unfortunately, the expectations of being a male in the families were you were gonna come back and work at the store. And that's really bad because some of them, it's not where their passion's at. And when it's not where their passion's at, exactly what Chris was saying, you know, you can see it. Not only can we see it from a board perspective, our employees see it. And Bob is not a good person.
So that's great. So let's stick with that point, then we'll get to the point of key stakeholder. I don't talk about stakeholders too, and other people are non-family, because that's an important piece to this as well. In relationships, so you're all in a place, and I think it's important for people to understand and I never asked you this question, but how did you all know you're working with a financial advising team? Someone said, there were some questions, and then someone referred me in to meet with you all, but how did you know that you needed help? Like, what's that look for someone that's in a room or listening online? What's something that's gonna be happening for them that they might be witnessing in themselves or in others is a sign that outside help might be helpful to me?
That was really generated from me, being younger, being a female, the older generation is just like, well, we'll just do it the way we've always done it, right? Don't worry, in 3 years, you're gonna be running the ship. It's like, we need somebody to guide us. Right now, we need a roadmap, we need a Sherpa, we need somebody to guide us through this process. And I need somebody that I can speak with, that I can bounce ideas off of, and because I've never navigated this. This is entirely new for me. It's a little nerve-wracking. It is so exciting because in less than 3 years, I'll be exactly where I always want to be. So we had a meeting, and the meeting was basically discussing, are we going to move forward as a family-owned business, owning it and running it, or are we gonna sell? And because I was like, yep, I want to be the next president. The decision was then made by the stakeholders that we will keep it in the family business.
Yeah, so, and there are, it's interesting, there are, and most of you know, there are ways, and I work with families who aren't in the business, who have a fiduciary board, right, and a management team, and the business runs, and the family has a council, family council works with the board, and the board manages the business. So there always is a way, no matter what, there's always a way to keep the business if you want to. Now, what ends up happening, those competing agendas, is you have individuals, some are retiring, and everyone cares. Like I find that our clients, they care about the legacy of the business. Because when you sell, and I can talk to you about someone else that, I know really well that, I can mention the name of the company, and most people here would know it. But right now I'm not going to because of where they're at, but, when you sell, especially when you sell to private equity, and I hear about private equity now. Because I know there's like Chenmark's, anybody from Chenmark in here? I know they're, hey guys. So they're different, by all, and they're maybe, yeah, they're put in the private equity realm, but they buy companies to hold them. And they care deeply about the people who work for them. But a lot of people in that space, they buy companies to sell them. And that's their agenda. And so and I've seen this happen, where they tell people like, oh, we're gonna, you're good, this is what's gonna happen, and then, it doesn't all happen. And then you go like, oh man, because you care about the legacy, you care about your customers, you care about your key stakeholders. The people who helped you. I remember a project I was a part of, with an individual in Minnesota, sold his company, and he did sell to private equity. But it was the right thing to do. His other family members, they wanted to move, they moved on to something else. But he's concerned about 3 key people. So I said, build them into the package. Make them millionaires. So he did. He built them in the package, and then they can choose what they wanted to do. And they helped him get to where he was, so he wanted to make them whole, right? And that was his choice. But I find that people that navigate these waters really care deeply about, and I think what can end up happening is, and I really appreciate Sarah's humility, is like she knew what she didn't know and she was willing to own that. And we don't see that sometimes, because like, especially being a lady in a man's world, it's, the energy's can be a bit tougher to take. And I hope that's okay to say, but right? It can be definitely tougher to take. And so what ends up happening sometimes is ladies start showing up and trying to be something that they think they need to be in order to strengthen themselves and exist in that ecosystem. And that also necessarily is not right either. We want to truly just authentically own who we are and not try to be someone else in any way, shape, or form. And if someone else has an issue with it, that's really their problem, right? That's really their problem in regards to that. So can you talk about what's it been like to be a lady in a man's universe and taking over a company that's been run by guys?
It sure has. It still is, technically. The lumber industry is very much male-oriented, as are a lot of industries. There's a lot of females in the vendor sector, our supplier sector, but being in an independent lumberyard, there's very few women who are in charge. I just actually sat through another seminar for Next Generation with Kylie Holland from Curtis Lumber, and and Curtis Lumber is based out of New York. They have 23 locations, been in business 130 something years, and she is going to be the sole owner and operator, president, CEO of her company. There are very few of us out there. I had to grow very personally before I could actually grow professionally. And I don't mean to be offending, but that's a big difference between females and males, right? Men don't think they need help most of the time. Some of the time they do, but it's a lot harder for them to admit it. It's very easy for me to understand where my weaknesses are, and that's what having Chris around really helps, because he's helping me personally and professionally grow. So therefore I can grow my team. And
So you can't separate your personal and your professional as a human being? Just kidding.
yeah.
It's so funny that we think that, right?
It's kind of
But think about it, right? Because like if I can't regulate my nervous system at home, I'm not gonna be able to do it at work. Like, is this stuff that people don't talk about, but this is real, right? And if we're in a fight or flight mode, I have a very hard time being available to even have a conversation, will get triggered, activated. How present can I be, right? And it's really funny because when guys get activated, it's okay. I find oftentimes when women do, they get called words, right? It's yeah. I wasn't gonna say it, but it's kind of,
I'll say it.
it's kind of crazy, right? It's like how the fair is that?
It is very unfair, but
Yeah,
it is very
totally.
true.
So, and I think this is the more of the emergent space as we look at part of the group, we're all here together to talk about rising leaders and what emergence looks like in family business. Heart-centered leaders is the future. Leading with the heart and the head is a critical piece for future leaders in the world, bottom line. Leading power over paradigms, do as I say, blah, 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 blah. That's old thinking, and it's starting to hit the wall in many places. And so, you know, how do I cultivate well-being in my environment? There's more people today that have anxiety, depression, calling in with issues that they can't come into work that never would have happened before. Well, baby boomers don't even know what to do with that information. What? Replace them. Like, with who? The line at the door? Right? Has anyone ever had these experiences? I mean, this is real. So how do we create space to help people? We can choose not to, or just go hire more baby boomers. Right? But every generation is gonna have needs based upon how they came up in their families, how they came up in society. And I say we accept responsibility to do something about it. And so this is, I think, one of the areas that I think Sarah is also passionate about is that she's the one that when we did her 360, she's the one that people are like, oh, so-and-so, you know, she'd help someone out in the yard that needed help at the holidays. Like the people, like, there's all these sorts of little personal situations where you could see Sarah's heart wanting to realize, because people that work for us, they all have 3 questions. Do you care about me? Can I trust you? And can you help me get to where I want to go? These are the 3 questions that our employees have, whether we think about it or not. Do you care about me? Can I trust you? Can you help me get to where I want to go? And with Sarah, what I found is I couldn't find anyone in the organization that would say, oh, Sarah doesn't give a shit about me. Like, this didn't happen. Can you talk about where that's come from?
I actually don't have that answer.
It's always been that way. Probably.
I've
Yeah.
grown
Yeah.
more towards that.
Yeah.
I've done a lot, I've done shared leadership training. It's no longer about me, it's about the team. We really need to have a team structure. I just learned actually yesterday, I keep trying to help my successor, and I was the director of purchasing. So I did all the building material purchasing for 10 years. And my successor is a little overwhelmed and stressed at the moment. And I keep asking, how can I help you? What do you want me to take off of your plate? And somebody said to me the other day that by saying that, I'm making them probably feel like they're not capable of doing the job, even though it's coming from a true place. And instead say, what resources do you need to help you succeed in your position? I have completely taken the I out of it. I'm not making them feel inferior, they're not capable of it. And just that one little change really will help the employees. And
That's really good.
I was very grateful. I had multiple employees reached out to me as soon as the announcement was made that I was going to be the successor for the president and CEO, saying, I'm so grateful. We're going to be the next ones up there, right? We are going to take this company to the next level because of the difference in leadership. And it's a great feeling.
And the current CEO has done an amazing job.
Absolutely. Everybody has.
Yeah, they all have.
We've been here for 125 years.
And this is the thing to understand is that every organization and every leader, my model is that just because someone's an amazing leader for one period of time doesn't mean they're the best leader for the future period of time. And then Sarah's successor also might need to have a different strength set and profile based upon the needs of the company and the space and time that we're in, right? It's just the reality of the circumstance. Mike's done a fascinating job, really good job running the company. He's grown the business, very, very smart, does a lot of things. And this is and it's always is the case, is when someone's, and usually Gen 1 and Gen 2 is the toughest. Because when you started the baby, you created the baby, and now you're moving it on to someone else, that's harder, usually, from Gen 1 to Gen 2, not always, but typically. But in a multi-generational family, it's still difficult to let go. And when you're a successor, you'll say, hey, you need to give me this, you need to give me that. Because like there's a natural, and I say, there's gonna be a little bit of a tension there. And let's just It's the elephant in the room. So let's just put the elephant out in the room and say, hey, it's okay that there's some tension here. Let's just own that that exists instead of trying to make it something that it's not, or manipulating it to something to be different. So with Sarah, what we did is we carved out part of what Mike's reality was and part of his role so that she could take on some of that. And then also we said, now we can free him up to work on some other things that he couldn't do prior. So everyone wins from the scenario. Now, and Sarah's role has to get backfilled. Now, obviously the business has to be big enough to do this because we're dedicating more resources to do something like that. But I'd also argue that the things that we're doing are going to create more ROI in the future to drive the comp anyway. Can you talk a little bit about your new role and what you're doing, and it'd be interesting for people to hear?
So prior to my new position, I'm the VP of branch development. Mike, our president and CEO, oversaw all of our branch operations, all of our branch managers, as well as running the organization and every other project that we have. Plenty of side projects that he's always involved in. So the point of my role was, first of all, I'm getting to know my team, right? Like, these are going to be the people that are moving forward with me as running all of our branch operations. So it set up a good alliance with me and my team members who are going to be integral in when I become the president. The biggest thing was I could be the buffer for Mike. All of these people can now, so there's 10 of them, can now come to me instead of 10 of them going to him multiple times a day with whatever issues. Somebody, I need to fire somebody, I need to hire somebody new, I need a new truck, my roof is leaking, whatever the case may be, I could be that buffer for him. So it was also creating a good alliance with Michael and I to say, hey, I met in Pembroke today and this is their issues and how do we want to move forward with this? So it's creating a good alliance from top down to the next level.
And by having, we'll do questions in a second, as I go.
Sure.
By having that ability to take a new position on, now we can also apply like a level of development, right? It's like, okay, now I've got a whole new role. And so what that's doing now is just cultivating the next level version of Sarah to step into. And the goal is to every year we just elevate. So when Sarah steps in to running the world, she's not gonna have to, there's be some growing into scenario, but by then, we'll have a lot of, and imagine we'll hit the ground running pretty hard. And it's a pretty brilliant way to be able to evolve and own it. And a big piece of that is we create a structure where we'll have sessions, but even with me, I'll facilitate with Mike and Sarah. What are our initiatives? What are we working on? What's working, Mike? What's working? I'll do one-on-ones with Mike, one-on-ones with Sarah. And I think this is really, if you're navigating transitions like this, I'm a huge advocate of having an outside resource that's working with the individuals individually. So when they get them together in dyads and triads, they can share more from their truth than filtering or, because this is what we'll do as human beings, because we're going to default to what makes us feel safe or what we feel challenged. And we also use a tool to where we talk about our triggers. We use a system called Print. So when we work with this family system, we got them all to understand what's their good day, what's their shadow behavior, what are their triggers, and then we had a working session to talk about triggers. And then also now, with Mike and Sarah's part of my work is like, there's ways that they can trigger each other, and we're gonna know what they are, and so we can talk about them. Again, we wanna create a container and space to own what's happening, instead of just trying to freaking build a strategy and run over the top of it, which most people do. There's no level of transformation there. That's just it's like driving your car with emergency brake on 2 clicks. You can get where you wanna go, but it's not the ideal way to optimize where we want to go and what we want to do. Another question or two, and then we're going to go to Q&A from the audience. And then we're also going to have some time to network today as well. So we built that into in case you want to personally come up and talk to Sarah, or ask her a question or whatever that is. You can say something? I just saw you move over there.
I was just gonna follow up with that a lot of us are immediate gratification, right? I want it now, and it was difficult for me and a learning curve for me to appreciate where Mike was at when the announcement was made and where my role was when the announcement was made. You know, doesn't really want to let it go, you know. We made this announcement, does that mean that nobody's gonna come to me anymore? Am I just gonna be kind of in the corner? And you have to empathize with that and understand where that is. And it's taken me a long time. It's, you know, it's not, what do you call it? It's a marathon. It's
Yeah.
not an event. It's
Yeah.
a marathon. To kind of take a step back and be like, okay, I know that this is gonna come. We've made the announcement. It doesn't mean that today I'm gonna take everything from Mike. And so transitioning with him is a work. And we seem
Yeah.
to be working through it.
And part of this work is learning to build deeper relation. And deeper relations, like I would imagine listening. What does listening mean? I compare it back what you said to me. I would say that's not really listening. It's just being able to rewind and replay what someone said. But true, we're talking about relating is I feel you and I feel you feeling me, and we create this feedback loop that we learn to do so that now Sarah's able to access and feel what Mike's feeling. And that's where empathy is developed. No one teaches us to do this stuff though. But this is the deeper work that's available to us and accessible if we want to go there to transform and learn to grow. Because if you're connecting with someone and you say, oh, yeah, I get you, but you don't get them in your body, they're gonna feel in their body that you don't, even if they don't get it consciously. You with me on that? It's an incongruent message. And when we create incongruent messages, it creates disconnects. So I would like to open up to, I'd like to just go ahead and go to Q. I have a feeling some questions in the audience. I'd like to be able to go out to the audience and allow you guys to ask. Part of the reason we're here is to engage with one another. You went first.
Yes, I'm curious, do you have siblings?
I
Well,
do.
and is Mike a family member?
Yeah, siblings and Mike,
Okay,
is Mike a family
can you
member is
set
the
that up?
question.
And how
So,
family members have reacted to you,
so when the decision was made, it was made on the board of directors at the time. There was only 5 of us. And it was voted with the family members that I was gonna be the successor. So Michael and I are cousins. We're second cousins. Michael's mother and my father are first cousins. And my grandfather and his grandfather were brothers. So we are part of the same family, and he is a family member. I do have siblings. I have 2 sisters. They're very successful in the medical profession and are happy that I am taking it on. My father, I have an uncle. He's also in the business. He's 3rd generation as well. He has a daughter, Celia, that is running our Nashua branch. So there are multiple. We have 4th and 5th generation, 3rd, 4th, and 5th generation currently working in the company. Michael also he has a son, Derek. He runs our millwork division. So we have a lot of us there.
I guess my question, in other circumstances where there are siblings at the same level, some male, some female, I would assume that there would be competition for the
Yeah.
role, and then you have to really maneuver and try to get them all on the same page because there are competing interests.
And this is a really good point. In their case, it wasn't so much that like there wasn't like her sisters weren't involved with it. And when we came, myself and my team came in, we interviewed the whole system. So we talked to people that are not in the business. People are like, why are you talking to me? Because we want to talk to everyone. We talk to we want to talk to the cousins and the in-laws, the outlaws, all of them. Because it's helpful for us to get context of what's happening, how communication is. I can learn a lot from talking. I learned a lot from Sarah talking to her own sisters. They share different perspective, really good perspective that I didn't get from other people that are in the business. And it's helpful for me and my team to guide. But it does happen. I've got another project with 4 family members. 2 of the 3 want the next to be successor. Got a dad who's stepping down. And so So part of what we did is we did 360s on all of them. So you bring an outside firm in to do assessment. And that's helpful because then you're not the bad guy. You're not the bad guy, like, right? And then also part of now you have to go back to the me to we. Why do I want to be the leader? Right? If they can get some people in the family business to really own, I'm willing to change and grow. And I want to take the few, and not everyone's going to be the same. I get that. But if I can go from me to we, if I don't have to give up something by allowing her to lead, and I can still have what I want for me, is it just I wanted the title? Was it I wanted authority? You know, we can't operate a business with a fixed mentality to say that all the positions, all the rules and responsibilities, all of what we do and what we do, all the businesses we run are gonna be the same. Right? We're working with an emergent time. Times can change. Maybe we'll start a new business. I don't know what's possible. But if we can create possibility with people who are motivated from the right place, there can create a lot of potential within that system. That's my philosophy. Is that helpful? It's a good question. There was a question over here, and then we'll go to you. And you?
Yeah, it's pretty similar. I was just curious if there was other people in your generation, and then if you've got this next wave of family businesses, the priority is creating a family that lasts forever. There's only one starting position on the team for CEO. Like, how do you maintain those family relationships? But
So it's actually kind of tough. So currently, Michael, he's our president and CEO. We're the same generation. We're 15 years apart, but we are the same generation. We're both fourth generation. We do have some fifth generation that have a lot of growing and learning to do. One of them is on the board, so there's always the potential. My daughter is fifth generation. She actually works in the company in the accounting department. Michael's son is fifth generation. He runs the millwork. So we still have family members interested and still involved in the business. So right now it looks like we're all right.
So the answer to the question really is, in its architecture, we built a timeline. This is several years of what we're working on here. We are building, we've got a board, and we're gonna up-level the board. But then also right now, in fact, we're having a meeting about this is a follow-up meeting where we're starting tomorrow. We're fine-tuning our future family employment policy. We're fine-tuning our family board policy. So now there's a policy. You want to work at the business? There's rules to do that if you want to, and that's totally cool. But these are the rules. So you start this stuff now, not later. Because then, like, well, this didn't exist before. Well, it didn't, you're right, but now it's going forward. And so that creates the space for us to step into. And then also you build, depending on the size of the family, a family council for family members that feel that they have a voice, even though they don't have any, they don't have any decision-making authority. And then you bring someone in to educate too. To educate on family business governance, educate on those things called the 4-room model. Don't have time to get into today. There's a lot of things that we can train and teach that people understand. The good news is there is a roadmap, right? We just need to own the right mental, emotional authority to step into the roadmap to have the proper governance. Go back to you, Hank. I'll get you a second. Go ahead.
Zoom question from Christopher Wasilewski. Question for Sara, do you have plans for future expansion or business moving forward other than other locations or production facilities, for example?
So we have a mill workshop, kind of like a Brosco. We manufacture doors. We are planning on expanding that. Hopefully it will be bigger. We don't have the room currently in our Jaffrey location, so we have to be looking off-site for this. Other locations, we're always looking for other locations. As I said, we just purchased Bingham Lumber in Brookline, New Hampshire. It's kind of an add-on. They do a lot of reclaimed wood, flooring, and this is the first time we've acquired a company that we are actually building a lumberyard and a hardware store from the ground up. We've never done that before. We've always acquired lumber businesses that were fully functioning and operating. So this is going to be a very new endeavor for us.
Excellent, thank you.
That's a really good question. There's another family I'm working with right now that's got a similar nuance, and they've been growing through acquisition. But they really haven't processed that. They're unconsciously competent, and the people who are running acquisitions and the family member and people that are involved, they haven't built any, they're gonna be retiring. So what we're doing right now is we're unpacking, how do we assess acquisitions? And this is something we'll be doing too, right? Because Mike's really good at this. And so, and you're that, like, so yeah, people that are always aren't gonna be here, for now, they'll be on the board, but how do we unpack that? So that we know, how do we look at the market, how do we assess, how do we look at P&L, who fits our model? And so that some of this is, I think some of this also is being willing, which Sarah's really good at, is being willing to say, I have a vision of where I wanna go, but I don't have to know all the answers and how now. And if we're into how now, it's like me showing up here saying I have to run through every damn slide, know everything I'm gonna say to you out of my mouth. I can't allow interaction to happen, can I? Right? And that's not a very emergent place to work from. Hank first, and then we'll go to you.
Yeah, just was curious, and I might have missed this, but is the board all family members or do you have outside?
Good question.
Yeah, that's one of my angst,
Yeah.
in all honesty. We are putting our family first. It is all family members, always has been. And furthermore, it's family members that actually work in the business. So we don't even have a family member who's an owner, because there's stocks out there that are not on the board to give their perspective.
It's gonna change though. It's not gonna be that way forever.
It is, it's
We're
one,
already talking about.
and it's very difficult. The current board members are like, absolutely not. Like, it has to be, we talk about all of this,
Yeah.
highly confidential information. It's like, but
We'll
that's
get there.
okay. Hopefully,
I'm
and
working on another family. How was Tyler? It took him like 3 years, but we got there.
and furthermore, my expectation is that, I'll remain on the board, but I'll remove myself for them to have an executive session, because
Right, what you should
currently,
do.
our president and CEO doesn't report to anybody, right? He reports to the board that he sits on, that there's never any other, and I need direction from the board on how we're moving the company.
And on board, and on governance and family business, this is interesting topics. I got a study group that I work with internationally of other advisors, and this guy in Ireland said, that was really interesting. He said, he went to school, got educated, took all these expanded courses on family business advising, and he came in and starts telling families what to do. And they're like, why the hell are you telling me what to do when it's been working for 125 years? And he's like, they kind of have a good point. It's working until it's not working. Right? It's working until it's not working, but having the ability to have the foresight to know, well, maybe it's starting not to work. And, you can see that Sarah's humility of saying like, well, I should be really reporting to the board. And she's, technically, a fiduciary board, she should be, they're her boss. And they should be setting her salary, and they should be reviewing her and stuff. And so that can be scary, right? That could be scary for somebody.
I have another Zoom question.
Zoom question, go for it.
Brian Dwinell, how do you develop and nurture non-family leadership within a family-owned company?
Oh, that's a good question. We should talk about that one. That's a hot button for you.
It is, and it's one of my passions. I know that our family cannot run the entire company effectively. I need to have faith in my team that they are, and uplifting them, promoting them. It's never an I, it's always a we. What are we going to do? I recently took over our managers meetings, and for years, we can go back, even when my dad was doing it, it was always the same thing, same exact agenda. Somebody just sat, read the bullet items, no interaction, no discussion. And so now I'm running it, and my first meeting, I had 17 people just looking at me, right? Because the expectation has always been set that this is what we do, right? I run the meeting and I just speak, you all listen, and then you go back and you do your job. So the second meeting, I have icebreaker questions, and
Uh-oh.
my father, and I make the board of directors, they're there as well. Would you prefer to have a unicorn or a dragon as a pet? My father's like, what? I was like, it got people to laugh.
I drag it all the time.
Dragon. Fire breathing. And so I keep doing that, and it starts the meeting off interacting, right? Everybody now has to speak to everybody else, read their question, answer their question, and it makes them a little more vulnerable, and it helps the meeting to go on. The last thing that I do, I have 3 questions at the end that I expect them to just email me their answers to. One's personal, like what's going on in your personal life, what successes have you had? One's professional, and one's a combination or just a random question. And it's getting them to open up to me to understand that I do want to hear your voice. I do want to hear what your suggestions and ideas are. And this is not anymore just me dictating what the meeting's going to be.
Yeah, and additionally, she set up a university for management. And it's being built out right now with a, she's just established a committee, and it's gonna dedicate the future in regards to giving, providing resources. I think the other part of it too is how do you nurture and allow opportunity to, because I've been in family business, I feel like, oh, there's an opportunity, especially smaller companies, right? What am I gonna do? I don't have the last name, right? And so that sometimes people leave family businesses because they feel that they can't. And that's why it's really important to have open dialogue with key people in the organization. Say, hey, what's calling you right now? Where do you feel called to serve at a higher level? Maybe we, and again, not from the model of how things are right now. Things can change. We can create, depending on what it is, maybe we create a new division of the company. I don't know. But having a fixed mindset's dangerous. Yeah.
When you have different generations, you have some people who are financial stakeholders only, they don't work in the business. There's different motivations, some want more income, some want to grow the business. How do you balance that? How do you think through that to keep alignment at the company?
Unfortunately, currently, we really just rely on the board of directors and the family members working in the business. We steer the ship. There's very little buy-in from other family members who are not working into the business. I don't agree with it, but it's kind of how it's been. Hopefully we'll have a governance board that even like my sisters can be part of, because ultimately it impacts them, right? As we move on, my father passes away, you know, they're stakeholders then. So it's a big deal.
Go ahead.
Oh, Sarah, I just want to say I feel a lot of synergy to you. I'm 4th generation female leader running my family's business. So major kudos to you. And I too understand what it's like to be a female in a male dominated industry. I'm in insurance. Not many female insurance agency owners in my space. My question is kind of twofold. How would you describe your leadership style? And how would you describe the company culture at your family business?
I'll start with the leadership style. I have a very shared leadership. I attended the shared leadership conference. Kevin Hancock
Yeah.
is very
Yes,
much,
he's a dear friend of mine. Yeah.
he's very much involved in it. Wonderful, totally changed my mindset. It was, when your employees can be heard, it's amazing what they'll do for you, right? And the generations, they succeeded, right? Previous generations and how they operated, we're here 125 years, it worked for them. And it's very different, but the workforce is also different, right? So what they dealt with and versus what I'm gonna be dealing with is very different. I know I can't do everything. I know I need a solid team supporting me, helping the company move forward. What was your second question? Sorry.
Company culture.
We're working on that. Before we had 9 branches that kind of ran independently, right? We acquired the majority of them. We acquired 5 within a 10-year period. And because of that, you know, the people were in place, we just kind of let them run their ship. And now I have one branch in particularly that for 20 years, they've been profitable, they've been successful. We haven't really, they're kind of like, I mean, no offense, the redheaded stepchild, right? We don't worry about you because you're working. But now when I come in, I'm like, well, this is actually the process that we're going to move through. I know it's very difficult. You've been doing this for 30 years the same way, but we are changing and we are evolving, and it's going to make ultimately everybody's life better. And so we're working on culture. We're getting there.
Yeah, and culture answers the question, how do we behave, right? How do we behave? And that's it's a great deep work that can be done on that.
How did you decide on the 3 years? for you to be taking, because that's giving people a lot of space and time for them to train.
That was Michael's decision. He decided when he wanted to retire, and then, so we knew, what, about a year, 6 months to a year before we made the announcement. And he needed to be on board when we were gonna make the announcement. We figured 3 years was a good time frame for me, first of all, to be in my new position. Then to kind of overlap with Michael, and then backfilling my current position so I can replace.
It goes down to like, what is good and why, and it's not the same from everybody, right? What is good and why, my philosophy is, I never wanna come into a family system and push out the person running the company. Like, that's not a good position, not a good place to be, ideally, right? It's just, why would we wanna do that? We want them to exit in a gracious way. And they should have, I think they should have some ownership, especially unless there's a problem, right? In which, in this case, there isn't. So let them have some ownership of what that looks like, and let them, and then also create the time and space for, we're doing a lot of initiatives. Your time goes by fast. It does. You think, oh, 3 years is a long time, but it's not, honestly, it's not. I prefer to have 5 to 7 years to do this type of work if I could.
How are you communicating these changes to employees? And in some cases, maybe that something isn't changing.
Good question.
So we initially brought all of our top branch managers, all the branch managers and key people, our controller, our purchasing manager. We had a big luncheon, and Michael made the announcement. He had a nice slide deck. And then, after, probably a couple weeks after, he made an announcement to the entire company. And sent out a letter, email, posted it, because we have yard workers, truck drivers that don't have emails, so. I am very big on communicating. I send out emails to all of my employees continuously. Open communication is the only way that we're gonna work. Every year I pick a word. Word this year is transparency. And I hold true to that, and my employees know that, so it's really good.
Other questions?
We just got a lot of love on Zoom for both of you, that they're appreciating your wisdom. So,
Thank you.
So can we advance, and we're gonna do a couple things here.
yes, you have control again.
You're not going anywhere, you stay here. We love you.
I listen well too.
Yeah.
Oh,
All right, so we did Q&A, and so there's a few things. One is, there's 2 things we're gonna do before we do networking. One, each of you has a sheet of paper here. I don't need this back. You take this with you. It's got some takeaways, it got some reflection questions. Perhaps more importantly for you, your family, or for your clients, I know some of you are advisors. There is a QR code, which is on the screen here. It's also on there. That is a free survey that we took us about a year to build on succession readiness. And it goes through mental, emotional, psychological, governance. It's a holistically, I never came across a holistic assessment that looks at everything involved from going A to B in relationship to B being a higher state of being. So that's, you can use that as a tool. It could be kind of fun to take it with a few family members, see how your results are and compare them. It will give you a number, it'll give you, and then also I always offer, if someone wants it, 20 to 30 minutes of time just to go over your results and any questions you have. And maybe sometimes people want resources, they want a referral on a resource that they're stuck somewhere. May not be us, could be someone else, and I'm happy to share. I mean, even down to the therapy, I've got a really strong network. And I think family visit advisors aren't working close with good therapists. They're missing out right now. I seriously believe that, because if you want to do the work, you sign up to do the work. And that's my philosophy. That's not for everybody. From there, now, so everyone's got that. The other piece is we have a handout that we're gonna hand out before we do our grand prize giveaway,
Yes.
right? Okay, I was told to bring stuff. So we are handing out, Catherine's gonna hand out a sheet here. This is a survey that you're gonna hand back to Catherine, not to me. And it talks about Any feedback you have, she'll probably share the highlights of that feedback to us, so please honestly be transparent and honest. If something that you wish we would have done differently, that would have been helpful to you, it's good for me, I'm speaking actively, and so if I get feedback, then I'm always looking to improve. Additionally, there are 4 separate peer groups that are being run from IFOB. I'm not affiliated with those, but I'm just mentioning them here, because we're all in the space to talk about that. And they're doing enrollment for next year now. So if you're not involved with the peer group and you feel kind of called to, what would that look like? How would that fit in? How often do they meet? What's that in it for me? It can be helpful to talk to others in a peer group that, these are well facilitated. That's a really important element. Getting together, having.
Find the peer groups.
Where do you find them?
Right here.
Right here. And Sarah can say that she was part of another, not here, but part of a peer group, so she sees the value in doing, even if you're working with a consultant or an advisory team or a coach or whoever you're working with, it can be helpful to get together with other people. Because it can be a lonely place. If you're someone in a certain position in a family business, to at least have some colleagues, some other people that might be navigating similar waters that you're navigating. Do we have the giveaway? How do we do the giveaways? Do you just do that later?
Nope.
So I was asked to bring giveaways. I'm like, oh my gosh. So I asked my wife to help me. And then we forgot. And then we remembered. And so I've got, and since, we're going into the holiday season, I picked up some, like, these are, we like these, so you don't have to like them. So, but we got these at a shop, and I gotta plug these.
Gonna
It's really-
plug these?
Oh, sure, why not?
Okay.
If you're ever in Exeter, New Hampshire, Forest and Ash, they privately owned business, really cool people. And we did candles. These are nice candles though. These aren't these are decent ones. And they smell like citrus and balsam. But also, we thought candles would be kind of cool because like you're passing the torch and also, shedding light on areas of darkness. So those are analogies.
So if you haven't put your name tag in here, you can take it off of here and put it in here, your business cards, so we can pull a door prize. Thank you both, Chris and Sarah, very, very much. We appreciate it. We're gonna have people stay and have a little bit of networking and mingling time. I'll come around here and just grab this for you guys. So this is kind of like a recruitment piece for us too, for our next gen peer groups and our other groups. They open up, as I said, in January and they're throughout the year. We have 3 different peer groups. One of the ones here, we have 3 of our executive one here who have been doing it for over 10 years. So BC before Catherine. So they found it very valuable and helpful. So we have peer groups based on people's level within the company and how long they've been involved or where they are in their management. It's facilitated by a coach. Priscilla does our younger next gens that she works with. And then we are looking for another facilitator for our executive one group. So we'll have another team that goes out for that. We also have a women's leadership forum. We have a CEO, we have working parents, we have POS think tank, and it's many of our family businesses use POS. So if you're interested in any of those, I'm the executive director. I know them very intimately, so we have over 50 programs, and we'd love to have you. And I've been involved in the Institute for 10 years now, and I've seen how much and how special those peer groups and how they really, really help. Because it's hard to run a business and it's hard when you have people, and they're there to help. And what I find most inspiring is other family businesses helping other family businesses because they've been on that road and they understand it. So anybody wants to put their name in here who hasn't yet? Okay, I'll make a wrap around. Anyone? And then the surveys that you are filling out now, we will use them to prepare for our programs for next year. Because we put over 50 on this year and we have more to do. So if you tell us what you'd really like, we try to make them all happen. And 98% of our programs. Oops, there we go. 90% of our programs are rated excellent. Yes, so we're going to take your feedback in. And appreciate it.